And listen, also, don't be fooled. Do you think every single employee you've got is pedaling at 110 miles an hour and are all aligned? They're all believing in the vision and the goal and the dream of the business? No. It's an unnecessary thought process to have, is allow people to come in and be good and passionate about what they do and come and help you. And I don't think people should be hugely scared. They should embrace AI, take the next thing, absorb it, get better. But that's the thing. I think it should be jump on, enjoy, learn, but move yourself forwards.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Long Game. Today's guest is Rob Saltrese, who is a very delightful person. He has 20 years of experience in professional recruiting, which he previously sold a company in, and he's shifted perspective of late. He now focuses far more on fractional consulting and what that looks like of bringing in fractional consultants to startups as well as big companies. We get into a lot of detail about what goes into why you would bring in a fractional consultant, when you should not do it, what to look for in them, and also how AI is changing the landscape when it comes to this services world of part-time fractional resources. I really enjoyed this conversation with Rob, and I hope that you do too. Sit back and enjoy. Rob, thanks for coming on the show today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For those who don't know CXO Lab and kind of what you're focused on right now, frame the pros and cons of fractional executive leadership teams.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll stick with the pros because that's why I started the company. So I better back myself in terms of this side of things. So the whole fractional world, as you know, is really kind of starting to take off. It kind of popped up in the last sort of 24 months or so. And I think it's taken a bit of a boom. And for me, actually, is going to be the biggest paradigm shift in the way we work that we've probably seen in 100 years, a move away from a traditional perm job or having a contract role 5 days a week or whatever it is to have that kind of guaranteed salary into something entirely different. And for those who really don't, I guess, understand what the fractional world is, it's a move where people have made into, I guess, consulting and advising businesses. Now, we could be talking about a CFO, we could be talking a CTO or a chief revenue officer, whatever it may be, who are now working in businesses, startups, scale-ups, or companies that want to become tech-enabled, who may be a bit more traditional, and they could come in for a very specific piece of work. It could be a 2-week project, could be a 6-month piece of work, 2 days a week, to come and deliver something for a set of founders or an organization. And that could be, as I say, to build and scale a revenue function. And it could be a growing organization that doesn't have that senior expertise at the top. They've just raised some capital. They're looking to kind of accelerate their growth, and they would bring in someone like this. But what it allows them to do is get experts at very senior level, as I say, who've been in the C-suite for multiple years, maybe been through 2 or 3 different startups. You could be talking about some very well-known organizations that have been super successful, which they wouldn't normally otherwise be able to afford, either on a perm salary or on a normal kind of day rate, for example. So it's tapping into that extremely high-end set of skills and resource that you wouldn't necessarily normally be able to afford in the traditional sense. So that allows companies to kind of bring these people in, but because they can, I guess, stay out of day-to-day meetings, there's less of the politics, they're not tied to, let's say, a perm job spec, they're coming in to execute and be impactful. And that is really what the world of fractional is all about. This could be, and it's incredibly creative. We're talking, you could do 1 day a week per month for 3 months. It could be a high impact piece of 2-week work where you might do some scoping and do some strategy work. It could be an on-running 2.5 days a week for a chief marketing officer for a year, right, to really kind of build out the organization. So it's the art of the possible. It's making what people did think was impossible possible, because we're just breaking all the boundaries of the norm around a traditional I call it 9 to 5. It's never 9 to 5, 8 till 6 type of job, kind of 5 days a week. So for me, then, the reason we launched the business is that, having been a founder myself for 21 years, worked with founders continuously, helping them scale their businesses, I just saw a gap and a need for help. As you know, being a founder, it's very difficult, it's very lonely, and whatever you think in advance of starting your organization, it is 10 times harder, 10 times scarier, and 10 times more stressful, and you don't always know where to turn. you're supposed to have the answers. That becomes incredibly difficult, and people don't necessarily have the network, the community, and people they can lean on to do that. So what we have now found is that by doing what we do and utilizing this kind of fractional world, and we have a huge kind of community sat behind us, we can come in and make a massive impact to organizations. So rather than taking on the high risk, high cost of a salary, taxes, overheads, everything else, and hoping that the individual is going to hit the ground running, be extremely successful, when, let's be honest, a lot of retention rates are only 30-40% across organizations, so you're almost guaranteeing you're going to throw money away at some point. This way takes all of that away. So for me, I think it's one of the most powerful ways in which you can build a company now, scale a company. And this is either you could be at the end of your cash runway and you're looking to do the final pieces of work in order to either get you to the next funding round, generate revenue, get product market fit, or you've just raised 20, 30 million, but you need to stop and pause and work out how you're going to go and spend it most effectively. So for me, this is where these individuals come in, and it can be a single person, it could be a team. You might want, a CPO and a CTO to help externally help build your product or give you guidance on your own product roadmap. Any of that's available. But for me now, it takes away a lot of the stresses and the strain and the risk to founders. They can bring in people who've been there and done it before, who can drop straight in and get on with the work that they need doing rather than taking 2-3 months to settle in. So those are just sort of some of the points that I would say.
What is it about right now? Like, there's so many different things going on in the world. We've had COVID that shifted everything more towards remote culture. We've had continuing more money into venture capital, more startups, more growth. And then we also have AI. Is there some reason why this makes more sense now versus a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades ago?
I think it's not about making more sense now. I just don't think people were really doing it, truth be told. I would say, in fairness to them, the finance world was probably a bit more in advance of this side of things, maybe more from what I would call a true consulting, maybe still 5 days a week, but they were probably the first movers into the fractional world. Which is this totally, you do not need any specific amount of time. Every project can be worked on in a different guise and a different style, and kind of anything's feasible. But I think for me, and what I heard from my network, which is one of the reasons to push towards this, when I realized then, I always knew I had the problem that I wanted to help founders and businesses grow carefully and reduce this failure ratio, but it was the mechanism. But COVID was the big push, in all honesty. First of all, it triggered remote working for the first time ever. How can you go and be a fractional necessarily if you live in Philadelphia, but you've got projects potentially in LA or San Francisco or wherever it may be? Not going to happen. So you had to be within your locale, which instantly would have restricted things. So that was one big trigger. The second was, I think, really a lot of people just spending, let's be honest, that 18 months was very weird for everybody. Restrictions on life like we can't believe. And I think it just made a lot of people think, and they just stopped and went, do I need to do this anymore? It really brought home things when you had so much time to think and conversations. And that's what happened. And people came to me and said, Rob, I'm interested in this company. Let's say when I was doing my hiring days, right, and recruiting, I might have a CTO job or a CRO, and they'd be interested in it. But they said, actually, Rob, I'd love you to find me some consulting work. I'm not fussed about job title, salary anymore. I don't need to go up the ladder. I've been there and done it. I want to now go and help organizations grow, be impactful, and change my life too. Have a different way of working, different way of living, be more flexible, be more interesting. What's better than working for 5 different businesses during a week than doing the same thing for 60, 70 hours a week over 6 days? And I think that was a trigger. So I'm not sure it's, we couldn't have done it 20, 30 years ago, right? I think it would have been majorly impactful then, but I think those are some of the triggers that sort of pushed it into the fore.
I like what you said earlier before about the nature of this work in itself is you have to produce value, otherwise you're out. And it's not kind of this cush job. It's not a full-time job where you have benefits and I have a 90 days to ramp up and prove value, et cetera. But you have to do impactful work because there's a very big microscope kind of looking at, okay, we're spending this amount of money for this person to do 10 hours a week or to achieve this objective. And so the accountability is extremely visible, which also means that you're going to have to show up, right? You're going to have to actually drive value and have impact. And I think, like you mentioned, there are a lot of people that maybe have made money, they've climbed the corporate ladder, they've had that comfort and that stability, but now they're looking for having more meaning, more impact, and driving something that they connect with forward. And so I think this construct does actually work very well in that vein.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, I think it's we go through history, right? There's a time and a thing that comes along. And I think this was it, for whatever reason, however it has come, to our attention as the way people are working, it was needed because things have been difficult, right? Even if we look at the last 2 years across the economy from VCP funding, what everything's going on, it was kind of needed. People then wanted to
What's the
change.
P in VCP?
So private equity and venture
Ah,
capital world, right? From the just the lack of deploying capital, the struggles they've had with their portfolios, companies running on the secondaries market, all of those things, which is why we know what we do is applicable in their world, right, into their portfolios, because they need to drive value. They need to drive value to their LPs and GPs who put cash into the back of the businesses. So that's why it can kind of sit across the range. But yeah, it's almost like it's like a sports team. If you've got a squad of players, you've got to perform. If you don't perform Saturday or Sunday, you might be out the next week. So that is kind of the mentality. And what did you say? What it allows is no ramp up period, no 90 days, no soft couple of months for an account exec who's maybe not quite hitting numbers, or a product team that have been not quite as efficient as they could have been, or an engineering team that are 2 months behind. You're also not stuck in constant meetings. I mean, even if you probably looked at your diary, there will be times when you look at things going, oh my God, I've spent so much time. Yes, you need to do it, but is it massively impactful? And the answer is probably no. And then if you take this to the senior exec world and the layer underneath them, they will all say they spend so much time juggling, doing things that are not allowing them to go and be impactful. I think this world just allows you to do that, frees people up. And what's more fun than just going and executing the stuff that you're really good at?
I am also curious. I mean, we were talking a little bit off the air. We've been talking a bit about where AI shows up in all of this. So there's obviously just a massive demand for AI expertise, generative AI expertise, building it into existing products, building new companies around it. But how does it shape the makeup of what a company even looks like going forward?
I think massively. The people that are talking, oh, it's coming. Do I need to look at it? I mean, it's here now. Don't make any bones about it. But nor is it anything scary. I think too many people are terrified of what it might do, or the headlines of people losing jobs and whatever else it may be. Not necessarily true. What we've just said there, you could perhaps spend 50, 60% of your time maybe being inefficient because you're stuck in meetings, you're traveling, you're doing all these different things, right? You're juggling someone who's off sick. That's no one's fault. That is just the nature of the beast. Now, imagine you could get two-thirds, all of that time back. And some of that was driven by some efficiencies, and a lot of that now is going to come from AI platforms, right? So realistically, you and I have discussed this before. If you are not looking at something, and I mean now and fast, even if it's bringing in something small and doing something, this isn't going to various seminars, lectures, listening to things online, and then maybe putting it in your policy. We'll review it in 6, 12 months time in the business. No, be too late. Move now, do something, even if it's a small part of the puzzle, get yourself going, get on the ladder and kind of work your way up. Like, it's no different to, I want to learn a new topic or I want to get fit. You've got to start. Even if it's baby steps, it will get you going. So I think now, two things that this will do: companies that are launching as we speak, or are maybe only a year or two old, have got two things to their advantage: is that they can take on fractional leadership, right? And these could be first time founders, doesn't matter whether they're 40, 50, 25 years old, bring in the expertise to help you, really high end, that will make, instead of maybe making 20 mistakes over the next 3 years, you can make 5. So you've got far more chance of survival and success, which is brilliant all round, and will make your lives much easier and less stressful. If you are then looking at adopting and utilizing really interesting AI technologies, all you're going to do is free up more time and make your teams more efficient, just like bringing in fractional. So all we're saying is you can then, instead of having a company that takes 5 years to get to a couple of million ARR, lots of funding, lots of mistakes, and lots of stress with 50 people, you could have a company with 25 people, some brilliant fractional execs, some outsourced service solutions that they use, and a bunch of technology that they spend, which is all AI, Gen AI, ML driven, that gets them to be more productive and more efficient. Now, if you said that to anybody, write the business plan, any venture capital business, any private equity business or high net worth who wants to invest in you, which module, which option A or B do you think they're going to go for? It's going to be B. So for me, I think people have, recent companies and going forwards have got a huge advantage that they can jump on, and they should. And for anyone else, they can actually now change the way they work and drive businesses. But I think even for companies now looking at starting, people will be having ideas now as we speak that they'll be sending their pitch decks in is look at what you can do utilizing AI heavily and what you've got, because not only will it get you to market quicker, it will get you to monthly ARR, it will get you to, taking investments of cash, I think.
One of the things kind of in that vein that I've thought about before is how the markets naturally go through a cycle of consolidation and then being broken apart, consolidation and being broken apart. And I think we've been in a period of consolidation, but we're heading towards a period of kind of tearing down those walls. And I think it's going to be different than before because, like you said, you can have one person working with a fractional team, leveraging AI to build a really incredible business. And that can be a much smaller overall cost. So they're going to need less venture capital dollars. It's going to be a smaller team. They need fewer people. And they can build way faster, like you said. So they're going to be able to have more impact with fewer resources. And so what I think happens is it doesn't mean that we're going to need less resources, right? We're not going to have less investment, but I think the check sizes are going to be smaller. And we're going to have a proliferation of startups that are maybe these 1 or 2 person teams, but they're not lifestyle businesses. They're full on, properly built companies that are focused maybe on a niche of 10 million people rather than 100 million people. And so I think these big corporations are going to they have the early mover advantage of resources, but I think from a defensibility perspective, they can't be everything to everyone. Whereas if we have 100 startups, then they can actually be 100 different ideas for 100 different people. So I think we're going in a very interesting direction to drive that change that we're going to see in the makeup of the startup world.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And I think all of these things are effectively like ripping up the rule book, from us just talking about fractional and how it's going to land through to, we have been in a cycle of consolidation. But then let's not look at the fact that lots of people are going through huge changes, digital transformations. They need to develop and change the business and move forwards. And as you say, we're talking about the big corporations. They've really got to adapt. We're talking like huge oil tankers that are going to take a while to turn around, and they've got to do something swiftly. So, and it works perfectly. Then you rightly said there will be smaller check sizes. So which is great considering we've had a difficult time in the investment world for the last 2 years, right? People have become a lot more risk averse, having been throwing money pre-COVID and afterwards. I mean, it was silly money. Then it fell off a cliff. We need a modicum of balance where people aren't fearful of putting capital in. But yeah, if you go now to a VC or you go through an accelerator and your business model includes all of these things and you're super lean, super efficient, really smart, bringing in high impactful, uber talented people that are going to help you build your product and your tech stack or your revenue side. You've got some outsourced functions and you're going to make more from the dollar they give you. Absolutely. All day long. That is going to appeal to investors. And then more people do that. We get the market moving again, which is always good for everybody. But I think it's going to see a change, but I think a good one. It's not like, do you remember sort of 15 years ago when suddenly outsourcing hit and everyone, right, we're going to send everything over to India and the Philippines. Did that for 5-10 years. A lot of people didn't like that, and then they re-insourced. Then it was kind of, do we do a nearshore, slightly offshore, proper offshore? What's the mix? And I think there's a really good blend now between all these different scenarios that people have pulled together. This is just another version of that, but I don't think it will be a crash. And I don't think people should be hugely scared. They should embrace AI. What are people going to be scared when the telephone came along or scared when the TV came along? It's like, no, embrace it, use it. If you've got a faster, better, efficient car, you're going to buy it, right? We don't panic about, Apple and Samsung bringing out a new phone every year. Take the next thing, absorb it, get better. But that's the thing. I think it should be jump on, enjoy, learn, but move yourself forwards.
Yeah, I think that the learning part and enjoying it are definitely critical. And I also think it's interesting to kind of start seeing corporations talk about their announcements relating to AI. I read an article recently, Walmart during their Q2, Q3 report, Q2 report, talked about how they leveraged Gen AI, and specifically they used agencies, so they didn't even do it in house, and built functionality that resulted in a 99% effort reduction for some tasks or some projects for some inventory management work that they were doing. And the phrasing specifically that they had, I forget exactly the quote, but it basically implied that the amount of effort that they put into the thing was the same, but they got 100x the yield or the results. And so it's not necessarily reducing. Again, all the headlines try to make it sound very dramatic of we've reduced effort by 99%, making it sound like job loss. But what it was that they actually had 100x the output with the same human resources using AI. And I think that's realistically what the story is it's not that we're going to be able to do the same amount of work with fewer people. It's going to be that we're able to do way more work with the same amount of people using this new technology. And that just means economic expansion and growth for all companies. And ultimately, the consumer should benefit from all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I fully agree. The amount of headlines for the last 2 or 3 years have been, bonkers and unhelpful, right? It's almost like the clickbait stuff. And you go on the news. When is news ever full of good news? Maybe every now and again at the end of the story cycle. So they rather talk about fear. But what actually Walmart probably should have written is, we made 100% of our people between 90 to 100% efficient. Therefore, their productivity was better, and we got the things that we were used to because it's habit taking 5 days took one day. Now, again, you're right. It's not going to be about job losses. It's okay. Well, Rob's now got more time on his hands. Rob is, very good as an actuary or someone who's an accountant or something else. I can go do more of what I'm good at, and therefore be more productive for what they are paying me. That is the kind of key thing. Look, I think it will take away a whole load of tasks, a whole load of work, but it won't stop the human piece on top. You're just going to drive efficiencies. If you and I could be propped up with our day-to-day work, which we'd love to be, with a whole variety of things sat underneath us that just did loads of bits that take us so much time to do, we'd be more effective. Therefore, our time goes further, generate more revenue, grow quicker, as you said, which is better for everybody.
Do you think that tying this back into kind of the fractional work and that cohort of, say, talented people that are now looking for maybe more consulting, more fractional, more higher impact work that they're doing, do you think we're going to see kind of this merging of the two worlds where these consultants, these experts start building out AI tools to not replace them, but to augment and supplement what they're doing? And then it's kind of this hybrid consulting fractional world where you're getting that expert, that fractional CTO, that fractional CPO, that fractional whatever role, but you're also getting kind of a bunch of AI agents that they've built out using their expertise. And so it's kind of this bundling effect of like it's the fractional CFO with their suite of AI agents that are going to support them in doing what they need to do.
Absolutely. I think you're right. It's a very interesting angle, and you've now just made me think about some people I know who are already doing that, because essentially, as we're saying, as a fractional, you're being hired for your expertise, right? No different to being a head coach. They want you to come in and look after the team because you're very talented and have had proven success. Now, people then bring with them their ideas, their playbook, which is what you want, right? Any C-level you're hiring, you want to get their playbook because they've been there and done it before. Now, the smart ones will be doing exactly that. They'll go, right, what other things can I do so I can get better? So I'm constantly better and constantly driving more value. And it ties into the nature. Someone said to me last year, well, isn't it a bit of a concern that, Elijah's working in 4 other companies this week and he's also working in mine on the Monday? I was like, no, because Elijah is learning and he's absorbing and he's surrounded by other people, whereas he could do the same job for you 5 days a week. He's going to be surrounded by no one different. He's not going to pick up anything new. In fact, he's probably going to be more stressed. So it's almost that thing where people then will pick up these ideas. I've seen someone do it in revenue operations, which is a big thing across particularly tech startup world, right? I think revenue operations is now sensibly being taken into other organizations. I've seen someone do it with that from their own certain tools and technologies and the CRM side, little plug and plays that they've got alongside it. And I think it will be the same for most people, right? That you're right. You might have a CFO who's got certain little tools and tricks, and they might get someone to build them something that they take with them, and it's almost like a plug and play little box or a solution. But I think that will happen. You almost get these kind of micro businesses and services that pop up as a result. But then I think that's going to be part of, I think a lot of people talked years ago about the new gig economy when you had things like Upwork and things like that, which are all very good. But I think this is going to change and dwarf all of that, in terms of, just the nature of what these people can do. But then these communities coming together.
Can you speak to that mindset? You kind of talked about how when someone is concerned that, oh, well, I'm just working at 4 different, companies and he's not just at mine, you bring up the point of, well, they're learning, right? I'm learning, whoever it is learning and kind of being stimulated and growing. Can you talk about that mindset? Because I think that mindset of I need to fully own my employees or my contractors, mind share. They need to just focus on my thing. Anything else is a distraction, whether it's their hobby or a different startup or a different consulting gig. And I think this is reinforced by investors as well, where there's constantly this idea of push for owning, like, build IP, build a team, have full-time employees, make sure that they're only focused on your stuff, and that is somehow the correct way. So can you talk a bit about the mindset of that and then maybe deconstruct it as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can only talk about it from when I speak to people. It's not one I have. I never have had, and obviously I can't now, not with not with the belief in the route that we're taking. But I mean, it's probably always been there. But then if you think of how many big businesses over the years will have used any of the big four, right, a Deloitte, Accenture, or whoever it may be, everyone's gone out to and got help from someone or some other business. We just have, right? It could be counseling, it could be training, it could be mental well-being. We go out and we get these things because they're services and skills that you need to bring in. I think you're looking at the wrong thing. You do have the wrong mindset if you are totally focused that these people need to be in your building. It's like, we've got to come in 5 days a week. You've got to be in at 8. You can't leave till 7. They're all just the wrong practices, right? What are they for? What are they driving in your company? What impact are they actually having? And the answer is none. You could be really, all of those are like stifling growth, they're stifling change and how people can develop. But this is all about impact and speed. That's exactly what we're talking about. With every company now, it is impact, speed, route to market. It's what investors are looking for. So I just think people have been concerned. They get concerned about sharing or, anything to do with passing on information. It's like people don't want to mention maybe a client that they work for because they're fearful that someone else might go and kind of poach it. But everyone knows every name. Everyone can find everything now. If I said to you, I work with AT&T, oh, great. I'm not giving away a trade secret here, but fine, go and find your way into AT&T. So I think that it's the same type of mindset. It's that fear, talking about things, not sharing. We all know if you think of it as a sharing mindset, if you share, you'll learn more. The more you give, the more you get. It's like anything in life, realistically. There's people that go out and really make themselves available for people, who go out and do things, the old mantra of the more you give, the more you get back. I think it's the same concept and it's trying to shift people. There will be people that do that, but I'd be interested to see how they're getting on, how their businesses go, how they're stressed, their careers, and if they've got their own organization, good luck with keeping up, realistically. Because, would you not want I'll go back to sports, right? A head coach that's been at, I don't know, won the NBA title with 3 different teams or won the Super Bowl with 3 different teams? Yeah, of course, because otherwise they're doing the same thing in one place all the time. Same applies to having a CTO who's been working at, 3 different, startup fintechs or, new neobanks. You'd want them in your neobank. Why wouldn't you? You'll be getting the kind of best expertise. So, yeah, I don't think you're going to change everybody, but I think people more and more and more will see it, and it is the black and white reality of get left behind or go with the journey. Choice is up to you.
Yeah, I do agree that it's just a far better utilization of resources. Now, with everything, you can still always hire incorrectly, right? You can absolutely bring in the wrong person, and there are charlatans and gurus and a bunch of jokers in the world of fractional as well. What advice do you have for someone who's maybe trying to bring in a fractional, pick whatever you want, CFO, CTO, CPO? So pick something. And like, can you talk through the process of how do you vet, how should you even source them if you're trying to go through your own network, or finding someone in general, and then how to make sure that you're clearly holding them accountable once they are within your organization?
Yeah, I mean it's incredibly hard. You're absolutely right. There's no silver bullet on anything ever. You're just talking about reducing the risk, and then the more you do, I guess, due diligence in advance, the higher chance you have of success in that kind of person working out. It's no different to a perm hire. So if you're going through your own network, a couple of things. I mean, let's say I recommended someone to you. You don't just kind of pass them on. You should really know what that individual can do, why they're good, and actually are they relevant. But then if I was giving them to you, you should question me, not just take it as a given. Really question that person, because I think it's far too easy to feel someone's done you a favor and is really kind, and Rob knows this CFO, therefore you should go and speak to them. Drill into it more. And I think people are very lax at doing that, and I completely understand why. I mean, I probably made the mistake myself. We take things for granted. It's like, go and eat this new 3 Michelin star restaurant. Oh, because Rob said so. Well, tell me about it. Tell me about the experience. What did you have? What did you eat? Does it fit? Well, no, it's all very heavily meat focused, and I'm a vegetarian, so that's a terrible idea. So I think you've got to do the same type of thing, is start there, ask a lot of questions as best you can. If it's just someone that you meet through a network or you find them yourself, go through the same process. But really, a lot of it is different questioning. You've got to ask what they've done and how have they been impactful. What have they built? What did they create? What did they change? What did they shape? And what did it deliver at the end? Because everything is delivering something, right? There's some form of OKR in there, whatever it may be. Even if you did a two-piece of work, you wrote a document and it was a strategic document to help take a company forward, what did it look like? Did they use it? And what happened? That's the key thing. And I don't think a lot of people ask about the end results. They're too busy going, well, is Elijah a really good CTO? What have you designed? What have you built? You could tell me a whole bunch of things that you've built. None of it tells me, were they usable? Did they look good? Were they scalable? Did they make any money? And were they still here 5 years later? No. So I think there's certain questions that you really need to push on. And a lot of it comes down to their process, what they did, how they did it, how they deal with people, and the results is a very key one. Obviously, you can try and go and get references. They're still there. They still exist. Much harder to do it, I guess, in a normal perm world, because people can't really give opinions. So you've just got to say, so-and-so worked here. It's become very difficult, right? We actually really want like a Google review of saying, I ate this restaurant, it's absolutely fantastic for these reasons. You can't get that very easily. So is there anyone you can find out or know who's connected to them? You've just got to go, it's putting in a bit of extra hard yards, but that's what could get you. It's no different to building your business. You work harder,
Mm-hmm.
go faster, you'll get more back. I think it's just doing that kind of layer of due diligence as best you can. And then if you're using someone like us or any other business and you're using a third party, again, get as much screening information as possible, understand what that business do first. Have they got history? Have they got a track record? Do they know what they're doing? What are their pool of people like? And then, you're looking at the backgrounds of the individuals first and get them to frame it for you, because that's what they're there to do realistically, is take a lot of that graft and hard work and get as much proven capability as you can. But realistically, we're still talking about people working with people. Nothing is ever perfect. Nothing ever works. There's a reason there's divorces and things in the world, or business partners break up all the time, because you just don't know until you work with the individual. But for me, the thing that makes it easier is going back to that risk side of things. If you have got someone doing 1 day a week and you have to, worst case, give them 4 weeks notice or 2 weeks notice, it's minimal impact. Now, if you're talking about a permanent 300K CFO, that's a hefty chunk of change you might have to pay out. Maybe you've paid fees on it. You're going to be disappointed because they're perm. Everything's, you've suddenly got to, you've got to hire again. You've maybe not pushed the company forward in the 6 months you've had that individual. So that's why I think it's so important, because you can never take away the human to human element. Fractionals are perfect because of all, like we said, the benefits of the high impact and everything else, but also the lower risk. It's a lower risk as you can get at the moment, because you've not hung your hat on them. You're not hoping that this person's going to, take you off to the next 2 years and that next funding round. You're just saying, come in and do a piece of work. If it doesn't work, great, we'll go and get someone else. You just can be very, blasé is not the right word, but you can feel a lot more relaxed about making a decision knowing you can pull the trigger.
It's an easier and simpler decision. And the other part too, that, as we're talking about this, I didn't even realize it, but I think part of it for me, because I've hired I've hired both, right? I've hired fractional people, I've hired contractors, I've hired full-time employees that were, kind of call it your mid-level seniority, and then also, C-level. Um, and I think one of the other aspects too is when making a full-time hire, it takes a lot of effort, right? You got to get the job description right. You have to go through sourcing. You have to do interviews. You have to do multiple interviews. You got to bring the person in. You got to negotiate compensation. You got to do, there's all this stuff that goes into it. And so I think because there's a more effort of onboarding a full-time employee in that vein, there's also this kind of like fear of, oh, well, if I admit that it didn't work out, then we've got to let them go, and then we have to go through this painful thing again. We got to just start it all over again. And so there's also, I'm just kind of noticing this in reflecting on my own experiences, but there's this pain and fear of like, oh, well, maybe if we just wait a couple weeks, it'll be fine, and I won't have to deal with this problem quite yet. Whereas if it's fractional part-time, it's just like, okay, well, this isn't working out. Let's wrap it up this week, and then you can just try someone else out. In theory, you should do your due diligence and sourcing and everything that you're talking about, but the effort level that you have to put in is far less, both in terms of separation and also replacing or sourcing. Because you get to, it's almost like try before you buy. It's like bring them in, try them out, and if it doesn't work out, it's no harm, no foul.
But it's exactly that. It's no harm, no foul. And you wouldn't, if you bought a pair of shoes that you didn't like and they were genuinely uncomfortable after 3 or 4 goes, you'd get rid of them. Just wouldn't wear them again, right? So you're totally right. It's all the effort that's gone in the beginning. Some of the smartest people I've met and known in the industry and just in general, and this stuff is, there's probably YouTube clips, everywhere for people to watch. But the best businesses hire fast and make decisions fast. So you don't need to go through 12 rounds of interview at Google or Palantir, whatever it may be, waiting for these big decisions. It's move quick, hire someone quickly. If you've got a gut instinct about them, test it first with other people. But if their gut instinct's the same, go for it. Negotiate fast, get them on board. If they're not working out, make a quick decision. Pull the plaster off. Same old phrase kind of still applies. But yeah, here, and that could be, you could have spent a year doing that. 2 months thinking about who you're going to bring on board. Ages writing the job spec, which is ridiculous. And bearing in mind, do we ever stick to them half the time? Probably not. They're ridiculous, really. You spend 3 months looking for people. You finally find the right one. They've got a 3-month notice period. Then they start. So you are 9 months down already. Then this individual lands next summer. And you've started the process relatively soon, right? You're thinking you're doing well, ready for 2025. Is that individual going to have any impact on 2025? No. They're going to come in September, October, get their feet under the table, and then you work out by December they're no good, and you're going, I've just wasted a year. And it can be that bad. If someone goes and hires a C-level exec in a month, luck, timing, one of those things, I guess it can happen, but it's not a reality. So you're right, it's that fear, and I've done it. Hand on heart, can absolutely swear I have made that mistake, hung on because, well, maybe it will turn around. It will just get better, We'll just keep putting that position in that player because they're gonna hit form this week, and they don't. I mean, that applies to my team constantly, sadly, but that's a different story. But you can't.
There's always a bit of wishful thinking in business.
But you have to. But I think you can do wishful thinking then with the fast, rapid, smart decision making. And anything to do with fractional, you can do that, right? I mean, it's not even the same with outsourcing because you have to go through searches, meet providers, sign up to these contracts, etc. Anyone, if you and I were going to go and buy a new technology or a new CRM or a new AI platform, if someone said try it for 2 weeks, then you've got to buy it, but you've got a 1 week notice period. You go, okay, yeah, fine. I'll give that a go. People are so busy putting up barriers and protecting things. The minute you allow people to do what they need, people will make better decisions quicker, but they're also far more likely to stick with you. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Maybe to wrap us out, when does it not make sense to do fractional? Obviously, we kind of talked about the benefits of it, it's helpful for earlier stage companies, et cetera, but there's also many cases where it doesn't make sense. So can you frame that decision of how to evaluate should I or should I not do fractional for this particular role?
Some of it depends on the need at that moment in time in your own individual business, right? And it could be that there's even bigger scale ups. I know there's corporates looking at fractional world. So I don't actually think it's particularly tied to a size of company, although it's probably spun out of the startup scale-up space. I think it's the need of what you want them to do. Perhaps it could be a size of a team that they have. Maybe you're looking to expand geographically, and so-and-so's already got 20, 30, 40 people underneath them in the business. So I think you have to look at each individual role at each individual moment of that company's kind of life cycle and what you're trying to bring them in to do. Could they do it in 2-3 days a week? If the answer is yes, then absolutely. If really the answer is no, you might want to think of another solution. But then the hybrid in between that is bring in a fractional while you're looking. Don't waste the time and that business plan growth that you've got. Because if you don't, as we said, if you take 9 months to bring someone in, no way you're going to be hitting the metrics that you want as a company or for your investors. So I'd say do that. You can actually get this individual to help you hire the right perm person, because who better to hire a CTO than a CTO, and they may know better than you as a founder. And that's something that we've seen. We want our people to go in, do a really good piece of work. It could be 2 weeks, it could be a year, but finish up and get out. No hanging around. We're not here to land and expand and it's deliver and be good. But then they'll keep you if you are good, generally 9 times out of 10. But you can help people like build their perm team. So I think that is a really good way of testing it out. You can see, would a fractional work? So if you're unsure, try a fractional, deal with them, see how much success that brings, if that gets you to where you need to be. And if it doesn't, you can then get them to bring in a perm. It may be brilliant. Or you know what, I know I'm going to have a fractional for 3 months, then I'm going for the permanent person. So again, but it's actually a good way of testing out, because you can try before you buy. And again, because anything's feasible, I have seen fractionals that have occasionally then taken permanent opportunities. They fall in love with the business, they know it's the right fit, and actually they swing back round to the permanent side. So again, it's looking at it in such a different lens. Everything is possible.
I think one of the things that you touched on that is actually really true is there's this subtle bias towards thinking that because someone's fractional, they are looking for longevity. They're looking for their incentives are not aligned with you, right? If it's a full-time employee, their incentives are aligned, and they're fractional, they're not. But that's really not true. They're choosing to be fractional because they want to have more of that exposure. They want to have more of that kind of unique flavor of helping out across multiple companies. And so equally, it still shows up in the context of helping recruit for a full-time replacement. That is absolutely something that you can have your fractional person do. And like you said, who's best to find your full-time CTO? A CTO that knows your business, that's already in your business, to help you do that. So yeah, I think that's a really good thing to emphasize, is that the incentives actually are aligned, because they're looking for fractional work. Like they don't want this full-time job. Otherwise they would have come in to try to interview for it or advocate for themselves. And yes, sometimes they flip to full-time if there's such strong alignment and you've convinced them. But it's very much aligned, and it actually just helps you long run.
Absolutely. And listen, also, don't be fooled. Do you think every single employee you've got is pedaling at 110 miles an hour and are all aligned, are all believing in the vision and the goal and the dream of the business? No. So, it's an unnecessary thought process, I think, to have, is allow people to come in and be good and, passionate about what they do and come and help you, right? It's that fear point. It's just like thinking, well, I've got to have this person 5 days a week, so I can't risk having them. Just breathe, be flexible. It's like anything, particularly as a CEO and any manager level, let go. It's like being a parent, let go, allow them to be good, and then you can just kind of keep an eye on people, but enable them to be the best they can be. That way, you'll get the best for your organization.
Absolutely. Rob, this has been wonderfully insightful around AI and fractional workers, fractional executives. If people want to connect with you, learn more about CXO, where should they go to connect?
They can find me. My surname is pretty unmistakable. There are very few of us, and we're all related. So one way or another, you will find me. They can find us at CXO Lab on LinkedIn or whatever. They can get in touch with you and kind of follow the podcast. But yeah, it's been brilliant. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.
All right. Take care.